So, I heard about the big party. I'm impressed you made it here. So, thank you for that. I appreciate it. My name is Oscar. This is Xuan. We are the co-founders of Fonos. And today what we want to do is walk you through our journey so far over the last few years of launching our company, growing it, and share the key lessons at different stages. But as a first kind of thing, I would love to get a feeling for the room. And if you would just mind putting your hand up and telling me, like, how many of the people here are entrepreneurs? Okay. Okay, and how many here work for corporate or some startups? Okay, so we have a little bit of a mix. Great. So quite an entrepreneur-focused crowd. That's great. So we can share, and maybe you'll see some parallels in what we have done to your companies. And hopefully, there's also something you can learn from our journey. So we'll walk you through different stages, starting from the very much how we came up with the idea and the key lessons we learned there, all the way to raising money from VCs, launching it, expanding our market, growing the user base, and so on. These are lessons we learned, might not apply to everyone, but it is what worked for us. And since a lot of the faces here are, since a lot of you are not based in Vietnam, maybe we can introduce Fonos to you. We're a mobile app-based business. We have over 3 million downloads, around 300,000 monthly active users. We're the #1 ranked app in the book category on iOS and on Android in Vietnam. We have quite a big overseas Vietnamese audience as well, whether it's Japan or US or Australia. We're a market leader, so according to the app rankings, probably around 70% of the market in Vietnam is us. And we launched in 2020, so right as COVID started in April, that's where we launched our company, which was a very interesting time to do it. And we've raised a couple million from VCs. Our investors include leading US VC funds and Singaporean VC funds, family offices, and angels from Singapore and Vietnam as well. And just as an example, last year we were chosen by Apple in Vietnam as one of their favorite apps for 2024. Now, the idea actually started with Xuan, so maybe you can say a little bit.
Yeah, so I was building my business before. It's an F&B chain. I'm selling bánh mì, the traditional food of Vietnam. Just so when I'm building it, and I expand it to also Korea, and I feel like it's a lot of lesson that I learned, and I don't know how to grow myself because I started when I'm 21 years old, and so I have to learn through books a lot and also like audio books. But back then in Vietnam, there's no audio books with high quality, so I have to listen from mostly Audible. So when I'm 30 years old, I feel kind of disconnect with my business, and I don't feel like scaling a business that's scaling a lot of people, which my company at that time was like that. Every store I open is another 20 people, and up to one point I have 200 people, and it's kind of out of control for myself. So I'm thinking of, and at that time I start to think of a new business, like with a tech side, where I can scale the business without scaling so many people. And at that time, it just come in, naturally. I think of audiobooks because I keep listening to it, and I see like, why don't we have audiobooks in Vietnam? And I share that idea with Oscar. So, for me, as a founder, I think I will not open a tech company without a tech partner. And at that time, Oscar was working for a tech company, and that's why I persuade him to, like survey together if we can do this in Vietnam. So that's how it come.
And that's where the key part kind of this lesson comes in, right? It's not the idea. The idea was not revolutionary, like you have audiobooks app everywhere. It was more about how we approached actually trying to validate it. Because why was there nothing in Vietnam? That was the real question. Like, okay, this is not revolutionary, right? We're probably not the first people in the country to think about it. Why did it not exist? And that's where we really dug into it. We talked to a lot of different people. One thing we had with a lot of Vietnamese people that we talked to is they clearly told us, you cannot charge for content in Vietnam. Like there's no business here because you will never get Vietnamese people to pay for it.
Online content.
Yeah, online content in general, but audiobooks, including audiobooks.
No, it's a lot of piracy and people not willing to pay for it.
Correct. Right, so we had a list of things of like why people said it didn't work. And one by one, the key lesson here was like going from first principles of how did they create this opinion and is it still true or did something change? So as we dug into it, one example is we started seeing, well, one of the reasons it has never existed before was online payments. Right? So before that, so this was 5 years ago, you already had companies like Momo that were starting to get really big. But before that, it didn't exist. People didn't have credit cards. And even if they had the money, how would you pay for an online subscription? It just didn't exist. Like, not even like bank transfer, maybe, but you can't build a subscription business on bank transfer. So that was a huge issue. And as we looked into it, we saw that, well, Netflix and Spotify were starting to take off with the initial audience in Vietnam. We saw that, the cosmopolitan people in Ho Chi Minh City, in Hanoi, they were starting to subscribe. And we looked at other countries, not just in the West, but we looked at China, and we looked at how did the payment situation evolve in those markets, right? So we saw that, well, kind of the same thing happened where no one paid until it became really easy and convenient to pay, and then everyone started paying. So we saw that Vietnam, or at least we made the assumption that Vietnam was not different from the rest of the world, right? It wasn't going to be the one country in the world where people don't pay for content. Now, we still got huge pushback from Vietnamese people, including Vietnamese investors, who did not really see that happening. But the key lesson here, like I said, is like trying to go from first principles. Like there's probably a reason if something doesn't exist here, why it didn't exist. And only if something significantly changed would it make sense to now actually try it again and implement it. That was very much the case for us. The second part was we started discussing of what would it take for us to test whether we can actually do it. Right? Like, okay, we can build an app. That's not hard. Anyone, you go to NFQ, you ask them to build you an app, there you go, right? You have a mobile app. But what was the missing piece here for us to be able to do this? It was the publisher contracts. We realized that, well, this is a copyright business, so without publisher copyright, like there's nothing for us to do. So what we did was we created a presentation that essentially made it look as if our app was launching next month with nice little mock-ups and very professional and saying like, essentially it said, we're doing this, we're almost ready, come now and join quickly before we launch with everyone else. And
we actually go to the book street because we have no idea who's the biggest publishers. Yeah. So we go to the book street and we find like 3 biggest publishers because we want to approach biggest publishers. We don't want to approach small publishers because if the big say yes, it's so easy for the rest to follow them. So Oscar was giving us the milestone, like if we have 2 yes out of 3 of biggest publishers in Vietnam with our kind of contract, then we can start this business.
Right. So this is actually a couple months later. This was the first real signing of a contract with Nhasut Banche, one of the biggest publishers in Vietnam. But it took us a couple of months to get there. And the key here was when we approached these publishers, it wasn't just, oh, we have to sign any contract. The big deal that we did, the big difference from everyone else, because one or two other people had tried it before in Vietnam, the big difference was we came in and we said, we need exclusive rights. So you can imagine kind of us approaching them. They don't know us. We say we will have a mobile app, but we don't have anything yet. We don't have a team. And we go to these publishers and say, hey, these two people you don't know, you should give them exclusive rights to all your audiobook titles.
And no advance payment.
Oh yeah, and we're not going to
pay
you anything as well ahead of time. We're going to do a revenue share. So as you can imagine, it wasn't an easy sell, and it took us quite a lot of convincing. Until we had it signed, we got a verbal commitment eventually, but earlier. But I think it took us almost 9 months until we got the actual signed contract. Things move slowly in the publishing world in Vietnam. But that was the key part, because as we analyzed the international market of audio businesses, we saw that the big weakness was really the lack of moats, right? No defensibility for your business. If I can sell the audiobook and you can sell the audiobook, well, if you do what a lot of businesses in Vietnam do, which is you just lower the price and try to compete that way, well, then I have to match your price, and then it's a race to the bottom, and none of us make any money, and our business is not worth a lot. So that was one of the key arguments for us going to these publishers, saying like, if you don't do it this way with us, it will be a race to the bottom, no one's going to make any money, no one will be able to reinvest into recording more and building this industry. And luckily for us, they had seen that same thing happen with ebooks before. Right? So with the market in Vietnam, basically, unfortunately, close to worthless. No one's making any money from ebooks because it was a total race to the bottom and no one's willing to pay for it. So the lesson here for us, and I think what we did really well, was we did not think just one step ahead. We thought a couple steps ahead, and we were not willing to accept just any deal, which I think the vast majority of people in our situation would have just accepted, the first offer that came from the publishers, because that was already an achievement. But we pushed back hard, even though we didn't really have a lot, to negotiate with. But we pushed back hard and said, like, no, we have to do it this way. And that was a key part that set our company up for the next few years. Now, you'll notice that until now, everything that we did didn't really cost us anything, right? Meeting with the publishers, I made a presentation and some mock-ups. We got through our network, arranged the meetings, everything until now, like all the discussions with Vietnamese people and consumers, we still hadn't really spent any money, right? And that was on purpose. Like until we had the commitments from publishers, until we knew that, okay, this will really work, we wouldn't have really gone out and started spending any money. But once we got the first verbal commitments, we didn't have the signed contracts yet. We didn't know how long it would take, but we decided, okay, we have to start building the actual product. We told them 2-3 months ago we will launch in 1 month. So we kind of need to start building something here. And that's where, when my tech background kind of came handy and on the product side, where we really focused on launching quickly. But the key part was as few functions as possible, but those that work have to be really good. Why? Because even though we're in a country like Vietnam, if you look at the apps that people here use, they use Western apps, right? So they're used to the quality of Spotify, or they're used to the quality of Apple Podcasts or Instagram, Facebook. Right? These are the apps visually and experience UX-wise that they are used to. So I realized that especially if we build a paid product, we cannot launch something that is good enough for Vietnam. Like we actually had to launch something that's on an international standard because that's what our users actually use on the daily. Right? And that's another mistake that I saw many people do, that when they try to do something in Vietnam, it's like, oh, well, maybe we can launch something lower quality. Like, well, not really. Because all these international websites, all these international services, they're here, and that's what consumers, especially in the big cities, that's what they're used to nowadays. Right? So you can't just lower quality just because you're here. And the second lesson on the product side that we did well, but it was nerve-wracking, was launching early. So when we launched our first product, or the app for the first time in April 2020, we only had 6 books on our platform. So, you know, like, you can imagine in that position, you kind of don't want to launch. You feel like, well, why don't we wait until we have 50 or 100, you know, like we have a real library built up. However, from previous experiences, I knew that that was a little bit of a trap. You can launch early. It's not like all of Vietnam is going to learn about you right away anyways. The people who will find you are probably early adopters, or are definitely early adopters, and some of them might be fine with it. We didn't know if we would get anyone to pay with 6 books, but we decided we have to launch, and then there will be a forcing function on us and on our team on the production side, because we do all of the production for audiobooks in-house, to actually start recording faster and, you know, keep it up. Because if we stay at 6 books, we're going to be in trouble. So now you can imagine we have initial contracts. We're working with a team to build the app, and we're about to launch. The key question becomes pricing, right? How do you do it? So I'd love to actually ask a couple people in the audience. Like, imagine you're in that position. You're about to launch an audiobook app in Vietnam. You have a couple books, couple contracts. How would you decide how you price it? I don't think there's any wrong answers. You know, there's different approaches. I'd just love to hear from 1 or 2 people. Do we have any volunteers on sharing how you would approach it? Rich?
I charge a monthly subscription.
Okay, and how would you decide how expensive that subscription would be?
I don't know, as much as I can get, $10 a month.
$10. So that would be 4 times the price of Spotify in Vietnam.
Sure.
Okay, all right.
So you have the 6 books, and they have a price in the market.
So there's 6 books. We will launch with 6 books, but there's not really competitors with anything.
No, but they are offline. The offline version of the book has.
Correct. So they have printed versions of these books exist.
So if you assume that every customer that hopefully comes to your service is interested in 3 of them, what would it cost them to read those 3? And then you have a price benchmark.
Okay.
So let's say the book costs $5.
Yeah.
3 books is $15.
Right.
Right. So let's assume they read every 2 months read a book. So you have a 6-month pricing is $15.
Okay.
It's at least a benchmark. You can decide if you want to be cheaper or more convenient. So you go lower or higher.
I like it. Okay.
Okay, my thought was okay, let's research the market a little bit, see. Let's research the market a little bit, see where our competitors stand, and where
So there's basically no competitors at this point.
But how about foreign, like
Oh yeah, foreign. Okay.
yeah, some kind of international platform. And the second thing is, okay, find a sweet spot that you think that the reader or your target market willing to pay because of that sweet spot or sweet you know, the feature that you are going to be different. Let's say I have a digital business card business, and it's like the only one in Vietnam, and the sweet spot is can book meeting, it can have a gallery to showcase your product that no other business card in Vietnam can do, or international. So that sweet spot, I talk to some people and they say, oh, it's good, I'm willing to pay $10 a month, so I will go somewhere around it. That would be my approach.
Okay. Yeah, you would check internationally, and then you would ask people how much they might be willing to pay. Okay, let's do one more person. Get one.
Probably for the first, I don't know, 6 months and the first 1,000 customers or something, I wouldn't really go for a price. I would rather motivate them and give them like an exclusivity or like early adopters something, but then putting the $10 or whatever on the website to say this is like a restricted offer, you cannot blah blah blah. So make it really like exclusive and get the demand for it that they want to do it, that they want to be your customers.
Okay. So make it very easy, maybe freemium in the beginning, and then slowly switch over. Yeah.
But it's also the moment of value creation for both the consumer as well as your publishers, right? Because you need to satisfy both sides. So actually, if you price yourself premium at that point, you're kind of setting a mark for that. And yes, you're not going to acquire 1 million customers, but you're kind of setting an expectation on both sides. So I think pricing it at a premium price kind of helps in achieving that.
Okay, last one, and then we continue.
Personally, I would do a free subscription till I get traction. And after that, I would, when I have the people, the traction, I will start to go with a benchmark with the other and to start the pricing.
Okay. So we have all types of different opinions. Many might work. I'll tell you guys what we did and what worked for us. So we did do a, let me see here. We did do a mix of different strategies that you guys mentioned. So obviously we looked at what's happening internationally, right? We looked at who are the top players in audiobooks internationally, how do they charge. Now, without going into much detail, essentially you have a Netflix model all included in audiobooks, and you have a Audible model, which is you get a monthly credit. But the key part that when we looked at that, and let's say we looked at Audible, we actually looked, as you mentioned, we looked at the comparison of the subscription to the physical book price. That was one of the key points that we thought of what is the average physical book price in the US versus the audiobook price in the US. And we kind of looked at that ratio and what would that be in Vietnam. So that was one of the key parts. The second part is, you mentioned premium pricing. So, and we did a little bit the opposite of what some of you suggested, right? Which is the freemium model or cheap model, early adopter, and then eventually scale up your pricing. I would say I think that's the wrong approach for this kind of product, and we did the opposite. Our thinking was, because they're early adopters, they're actually willing to pay more. If we launch early and our product is still not great and we still don't have a lot of books, well, it's not like casual average people are going to find us anyway. The people who will find us will actually really be into audiobooks. And they don't have a lot of alternatives, and they might want to support us. So we will actually launch at a premium price because they are willing to pay for it. So you can't really see it here, but over there is our first month of revenue in April 2020, which is $93.77, which is a cute amount, but we were shocked, right?
It's not my mom.
Yeah, actually, Xuan, we checked, okay, who subscribed? Is it our parents and our, our friends? But actually, just there were real strangers who had subscribed at that point, even though we only had 6 books. And I think in the end, there's a couple of companies that tried to do the free to paid model. I would say the one case, or it would work if you are world-class at raising money, right? Because you need crazy user growth, and you need to keep funding the business for a while. And if you're very confident in that side of your skill set, and also you don't get unlucky with the timing and the VC market crashes like it did in the last few years, that's fine. For us, we were always a bit more on the conservative side, where we didn't want our company's survival to depend on VCs. So we were pushing early revenue. And I'll get to it later when we talk about raising money, but there were also downsides to that, depending on how you approach it. But essentially, we launched this way, and we started getting paid users, which was really great news for us, and kept going from there. So now the next question of, all right, so you launched it, you announced it on Facebook, on LinkedIn, a couple of your friends downloaded it, some people found it organically. You have your first $100 in revenue, but now you actually have to start getting real users. So let's have another 1-2 questions, 1-2 answers from the audience of how would you go about how do you start acquiring users for this app now? You have an audiobook app, it's on the App Store, it has 6 books, every month there's new books being added. How do you get the first users? Or the first scalable kind of user source?
Can you go and pitch at some book clubs?
Like in-person book clubs, and you...
I don't know how it exists in Vietnam, but I know there are some book clubs, so maybe target them somehow.
Okay.
Well, you have the publishers, and they might have their own channels, and if they are willing to push the publishers that you already have signed up, so you get maybe even a free marketing channel.
Yeah, that's good. And let's have one more. One or two.
Okay, I would create a YouTube channel and have some of it there for free.
Okay. All right, very good idea.
Radio adverts.
Radio. Oh, because you have audio listeners. Okay. Okay. So, good ideas, and the YouTube thing is something that we actually ended up going with. So the key question, you know, because my background on the tech side had been both on the coding and on growth marketing, and one lesson I had learned before in my career has been it's really hard to create demand. It's way easier to find where demand already exists, right, and just tap into it. So that was my thinking of, well, if you're in Vietnam and you're trying to look for audiobooks, where would you go? And that's where we realized, like, YouTube. People were reading audiobooks themselves and uploading the videos on YouTube in Vietnamese. Now, technically, they're not allowed to do that. It's breaking the copyright, but that's what people were doing. And we saw that there were some videos that had like 2 million views. So this was interesting for us. So the key part that we did with YouTube is we looked at it as these users want to listen to these audiobooks. So we have the copyright because we work with these publishers. So we actually have the right to take down these videos because they're not allowed to just read the books on YouTube. But I don't want that search traffic to go to waste. So what we did was we took the first chapter of every audiobook that we have, we uploaded it on YouTube so that if they search for that audiobook on YouTube, they will find our video with great audio quality, really nice. And then we have a big button there like, hey, if you want to listen to the whole book, download our app. And you can see here, as of yesterday, we have 720,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel. We get 2 million organic views a month. And all we do is, for this one specific use case, all we do is just upload the first chapter of every audiobook and make sure that our video is the one that they find. And that has been a phenomenal growth strategy that, you know, especially in the first 2 years, was huge for us. Right? And the key lesson here, right, probably for most businesses, you can't exactly copy this. This doesn't work for other businesses. But the idea was tapping into the existing user behavior and how to get our product in front of these people that are already searching for it and not trying to create it from scratch, which would be so much harder, you know, which I have learned over the years as we try to expand our marketing. It's not that easy. But that was a great start and one of our key strategies that really helped us grow. Another thing that we did was influencers. So for every product, you have to look at what advantages does your product have versus others. And when we looked at ours, well, the big advantage of audiobooks is it's books, and people like talking and people like showing off books because it makes them look good. Right? If you're an influencer and you show like, oh, I was just reading Sapiens, I was just reading whatever book that's hip right now, you know, like people like showing it off. So we started looking at, well, who are the people that are both mainstream in Vietnam, but also at the same time would be, people would trust their opinion on books. Right? Because you can't just have any hot model, you know, promoting your app. Like, it's not believable. No one will care. It actually needs to be someone whose opinion people respect. So here, maybe you can see it. This is Xuan, kind of with Ms. Taiwan Lin. Maybe you can share a bit
Yeah, so at that time we were like brainstorming which influencer we should reach for, and at that time we haven't raised fund, we don't have much money, and we need it to work. So we were brainstorming who will be the one that when they present about books and a new idea of audiobooks in Vietnam, people will listen and they would want to pay for it. So she happened to be one of the judges in Shark Tank Vietnam, and she have more than 1 million followers and very active at that time. So that's why we decided that we're gonna go. We don't wanna work with many influencers because of our limited resources. We wanna find the best one and go for that person. So that's why we go and persuade her. She also become our investor for Fonos later. But at first, she happy with promoting us, and we right away starting live streaming with her. At that time, I do live stream with her a book club every week. That
every month.
Every month we have around 2,000 views live, and after that the clip always have more than 100,000 views. So with that and the YouTube channel, it helped us to get the organic user coming to Fonos.
And it was, I mean, we were really lean. Like on the left side, that is the couch in our living room, where we just invited her to our home and we figured out how do we record videos and stream it.
Yeah.
And so it was a very, budget setup. But it worked fine, and later on, this is in our office later where we had a more professional setup, but in the end, the results were the same. It was just more comfortable later in the office, but we got the same amount of people viewing us when we were recording from the living room as from the studio.
Yeah.
And as you can see, probably see from what we've said so far, we were very lean, especially I would say in the first 2 years of our business, right? And most of the work was done by Xuan and me. And the key part of it, to be completely honest with you guys, is, well, first of all, we hadn't raised a ton of money, barely any. Maybe at this point we had raised some angel money. But the key part was the quality of the people that we could hire. Right? So it's not, when you have a new product that doesn't do a lot of revenue, is not very famous, you haven't raised millions of dollars, hiring employees is like top level employees is not that easy. Right? Maybe through your network you can get 1 or 2 in key positions, but it's not like everyone that applies to your company is going to be a top star. And so we realized that, well, for example, on the marketing side, like me just doing most of the work with maybe 1 or 2 freelancers helping out was actually better than the kind of marketing manager we could hire at that point. And we would be faster and better, at least in the first 2 years, doing what we do instead of hiring. So a lot of same on the audio production side. Xuan was leading the entire audio team and kind of telling them what to do. Then after 2-3 years, now we have a CTO who is way better technically than me. But for the first 2-3 years, I was leading the tech team. I should not be a CTO, but I know just enough to be able to manage good developers and keep them on track. But that was absolutely the right thing to do. Like, unless you have already people coming from your other jobs, your experience, right? You have some advantage of getting these people. On the market, you will probably not be getting the most amazing employees at this point. So you might have to do a lot yourself. The other lesson that I really learned, so I hadn't really scaled teams before that, where you need the right people for each stage. It's not that you hire someone early on and these people are able to grow with you for the next couple of years. There's a couple employees like that, but it's actually the minority. The employees that were okay at 1 to 5, 1 to 10 employees were not the ones that are okay at 40 or 50 employees. Very different skill sets, very different people that we can get. in the early stages of like under 10 employees, we needed either super autonomous, where they were able to completely work independently, or just like someone who I give them the task and they get it done, and that's it. Right now we have managers, we have people, actually normal team structures, but we were not able to get these people early on. It was really a process of every year, especially as your scale grows, getting very different people. And that is, every year we have to look at it for our team, like do we have the right people for our current stage? And it's not something that I expected beforehand. Okay, raising money. So at this point, we had raised our first angel money from angels. We had later raised some pre-seed. And I think that we were kind of approaching the actual VC funds now for some bigger rounds. For context, we've raised around $3 million from VCs. And there's two lessons that I think we should talk about here that we learned. So the first one is making sure that you actually need and want to raise VC funds. I can tell you from all the conversations I have with my other entrepreneur friends, everyone who raised money hates it. There's no one that says, oh, that was fun. Everyone says it's miserable, and I completely agree. It's not fun, it's miserable, you have a lot of pointless conversations, it takes a long time, it's difficult, it is not fun. Right? So sometimes it may seem that way in the media of like, oh, it's fancy, it's cool, you raise something, someone writes some articles about you. The process is awful. Like, if you don't need it, it's not fun. And almost everyone I know that raised money tells me like, oh, the next company I'll do, I will not raise any money, I'll self-fund it. So that tells you a lot as well.
To be fair, the pros of raising money is, you have a chance to, to prove yourself and test your product, test your idea. And you hear the very straightforward opinion from others. So I think that is something I gained through raising fund. But, building my own business before, I start from, like selling bánh mì, and I meet those kind of people who, in the morning, they pay money to buy ingredient, and they sell, and at the end of the day, they collect money and they have profit. So I growing up and building business that way. So when the idea of raising money and spending money and wasting money, for me, it's confusing for me. Like I don't understand how to build a company where you raise a bunch of money and you don't know when you will break even and how you keep raising. I don't understand that. So to me, business is making money, making profit. So with that, in 2019, when they still, easy to get funding, we already talk about how we should be very skeptical and we should see this as a real business where it's sustained without VC or anyone money, because that to me, maybe it's not an idea of a business to me. So that's why when we raise money, we also very skeptical with the amounts we raise. Why do we raise? Who do we raise from? Because I know myself, like what type of person I am in business, what type of business I want to build, what type of product I want to be involved with. So I don't want to raise the money from the people who have a different path, who have a different goal from me, and collecting their money will make my life miserable. So that's why with raising fund, until today, we're very skeptical.
Yeah, so I was lucky with some previous experience from a B2B SaaS company that I worked for out of London, because I saw what the founders there did and I really liked it, which was a hybrid approach where they raised money, but they always kept their burn at a certain level where, yeah, they were burning money every month, but never out of reach of like worst case scenario, within a few months, they just have to fire a bunch of people, but if they can break even and they don't go bankrupt. So I watched them do it and they were very successful. And that was one of the lessons that I looked at as well, of like, hey, if we build this, I want to have that kind of hybrid approach of we need the money because we need to record thousands of audiobooks. We have to invest in a lot of stuff that we can't self-fund. But I want to make sure that we're within, as close as we can, be within a margin of not depending on the next funding round. And the last couple of years of our company are gone if we don't get it. And the market changes. So that part that Xuan said is key for me as well, where just be clear about which game you want to play, because there's different types of investors. There's not just one type of investor. You have, even within VC, you have we have some funds that invest in us and others that we talk to. I've had conversations with funds, like one out of Indonesia, who straight up told me like, hey, we don't care about your revenue. It doesn't matter. It's not big enough. All we care is user growth, right? Fair enough. Their game was very different, and they had a clear path of what they were looking for. And I had others that looked at us and what we were doing, and they were like, hey, this is amazing. You guys, even though you're so early stage, you already managed to get X amount of revenue from your users. It's a very strong signal you'll be able to monetize more later on. And it was very much aligned with our vision, right? So we've seen and observed from friends that we have that have raised from investors, it is absolutely possible for an investor to push you in a direction that can absolutely ruin your company. We've seen people go bankrupt because a company told the entrepreneur to expand into another country, and then the market changed, and they suddenly said, oh, now you need to be profitable. And he told them, like, guys, I'm running out of money. You guys, I just spent my last raise on expanding into that market. They were like, yeah, tough, and went out of business, right? And so the key part is either one is fine. I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm saying make sure that you choose the one that you want to play. You want to play crazy user growth and raising, and depending on that, there's people that succeed with that. There's people that succeed more by focusing on revenue. Just be very conscious about which one you choose, because it really depends. And you can find the right investors for either one, right? There's not one way to do it. So this is another question that I'd love to ask to the audience. So eventually, we did all these things with the audiobooks, and we became market leader. We're doing well. We're quite secure in our position here. So now comes the question of, well, where does the future growth come from? Right? Okay, audiobooks, they keep growing every year. That's fine. But we want to expand our market. So I'm curious to hear, like, where would you guys look for? What else should this company do?
You found a niche because there was no audiobooks in Vietnam, so maybe there's other countries without audiobooks?
Right. International expansion, look at other countries. Absolutely. So look at the overseas Vietnamese markets and reach those users. Yeah. Okay. Okay, one more. Right, new types of content, right? Expand from, don't just stay with audiobooks. So,
attract authors and skip the publishers.
Right, like become essentially a publisher ourselves and skip the middleman of the publishers. So all of these are good ideas, and all of these are things that we considered, and we even did some of them. Key part here is, so as we looked at it, we looked at all these options of, do we go international and do we just try to do the same thing in Thailand, in Indonesia? That one we decided against. We looked at the markets there. The biggest issue was really that we had no advantage in these markets. Because audio, it doesn't really translate well internationally. You essentially have to do everything from zero. The publisher contracts also don't transfer. We have to start from zero. So it wasn't impossible, but we also, it's my personal philosophy, I don't like doing stuff where I don't see I have an advantage. So in Vietnam, because of the publisher relationships that we had built and how we did it, we had huge advantages. We would have to start building from zero in countries like Thailand and Indonesia, where we would be at a disadvantage because already there were some people doing stuff there and dealing with the publishers. So that wasn't really enticing. And we looked at other countries. We looked at what was working in China. We looked at what was working in the West. We looked at other types of audio content. There were apps like out of India, like Pocket FM, that were super focused on fiction. So they were like romance stories. So producing content ourselves, not books, but audio content like ghost stories or romance stories in-house, and producing a lot of that.
Noise in Indonesia.
Noise in Indonesia, who they decided to go after podcasts and
Comedy.
a lot of comedy with big influencers. So we looked at all of that. But then one thing that changed our direction is simple user interviews that we did with our users. And we actually asked them, one of the key questions was, why do you use Fonos? Like, what do you get out of it? And 85 to 90% of people told us they use Fonos to learn. So it wasn't, they didn't see it as an entertainment product. And we knew this in a way because we know the top 10 best-selling books, and always like 8, 9 out of them were always nonfiction books. So whether it was career, finance, like personal finance, but also health, parenting, spirituality, all of these were always in the top 10. So they were the best-selling books. And that's when we saw like, oh, okay, people are not seeing us as an audio entertainment company, they're seeing us as a self-development tool. And audio is just really convenient because everyone's busy. As they go here to some talks, they sit in the Grab car, they can put in the headphones and listen, or they're in the gym, right? And it's just a convenient way to do it. We even asked, okay, maybe this is just because we have so much nonfiction content. Do you want us to add more fiction content? Do you want more other stuff? And they were like, 90% were like, no, I just want more stuff to learn. So, we could have tried being like, okay, maybe we just try to attract a different audience. But I'm not a fan of that. My approach was just like, no, these people, we have this existing audience of like 300,000 monthly active users. Like, let's actually give them more of what they want. So the product that we launched last year that also took off and did really well is a product we call Pod Courses. So this was quite a, like unexpected move, I think. We didn't think of it in the early stages. We looked at audiobooks, and instead of trying to go, which we even considered for a while in the beginning, which was, we're an audio app, so what other audio can we give people? We actually switched it around and started asking, people want to learn and self-develop, what else can we give them for learning and self-development, right? So we started asking from the user's perspective and their need. And that's where we thought, well, what are the downsides of audiobooks? One, really long, right? 8, 10 hours. Besides that, only audio, which is good in some ways, but it's also a bit market limiting. So what we did was we thought, well, okay, we have a strong brand now in Vietnam, right? So that's an advantage we have. So we can approach experts in essentially all the fields in Vietnam, and they are happy to partner with us. So we did something, these podcasts are essentially, if you're familiar with masterclass, a little bit courses in that direction, where we get Vietnamese experts or Vietnamese specialists in different areas. Some of them are business, but some of them are psychology or health. And we record courses with them where they share their experience. So this is not just anyone, but really like the best people we can find in every field. And this worked really well. So because the same people that we had them come as a first step, let's say they spent $4 on a personal finance book, right? They buy Rich Dad Poor Dad. So we know what they're interested in. We know they're into personal finance, right? What's the next step? Well, the next step is like, well, how about who's the top Vietnamese personal finance expert that will give you a course, talk to you directly? Well, that's a great upsell, right? So these are double the price of audiobooks, and it's our next step for users to move up the value chain. And a lot of that work, Xuan it was a lot of going one-on-one, finding the right people, convincing them to work with us. But we were able to use the advantages we had from the previous stuff we did to help us establish this. We couldn't have launched straight into it. It was only possible because we had the previous experience on the audiobook side and the reputation from that.
To come up with this, we actually have 1 full year struggle. Which direction we go, which content. So we did try, we tried book summary also, like meditation. Like we see cases in the West, like Calm and Headspace, the evaluation very high with these content only, or Blinkist with book summary. But the lesson we also learned that when we learn some model in the West and try to apply in Vietnam, we also have to check the timing. The timing and, the culture. Are they really ready for that? If you go and ask them, they would say yes. They always say, yeah, I'm going to pay for meditation. Meditation is good. But they don't actually pay for it. So yeah, like Oscar said, should we do a ghost story? Should we do comedian where we see a big view, But we see first, it's not our advantage. I don't know how to start with comedian content and stuff. It's not our advantage. And second, I don't see money. What we're looking for is like to grow our business sustainable. And I'm looking for another content where I can charge people money. And ideally, I can charge more than an audiobooks. Because right now we charge around $4 per audiobooks. I would like to double or triple that. So like how can I find the kind of content where I can do it? Now I have 300,000 users with their cards pay for Fonos every month. How can I persuade them to pay more for us? What kind of pain should I solve for them? So, like more than 90% of the books in Vietnam are translated books. It's not like Vietnamese writer. It's growing now, but it's still very little. So when we translated books, there's a lot of things it's not fit in our context, in our environment. So that's when people go for, the offline courses. And I joined many offline courses. And I'm very surprised because it's so hard to charge them $4 per book. But when I go to a weekend course, I can see like they easily charge $100 per course for for the content that they study from the book. And up to another course that I joined for real estate is like $2,000. So that course for 2 days weekend, and they have 50 people joining. And I was looking around like, who are these people? And I expect that they, like someone who make a lot of money, have money, now they want to invest in real estate. So they pay that $2,000 to learn. But actually, when I look at them, they're very average. They're very normal. They don't even speak English. They're just selling random stuff at their house. But they really want to make more money. So they're willing to pay as an investment. So they see that those payment they pay as an investment. And that's when we recognize that what Vietnamese or Asian, because we see that it's similar in China too. People, when they invest, when they pay for content, for learning content, they see it as an investment. Then they can pay more. But if we go for ghost story or comedian or something, it's an entertainment. And entertainment, in their head, it has to be free. Why do I have to pay for it? I can go on YouTube and there's tons of it. So that's when, and also with the user feedback, what they use us for learning, that's why we choose this as the path that we go for. And it's also fit with ourselves too, our strength too. Like as I say, I don't know anything about comedian content, something. It will take me longer time to build it than this kind of product.
This was an interesting lesson as well, where for those of you who are active in Southeast Asia, we saw that there were some countries that were similar to Vietnam and some that were going a very different path.
Yeah.
So this is not a market that, all the countries, the same solution will work for every country. Like Xuan mentioned, we see strong similarities in our type of content with China. And for example, I've talked to enough VCs and entrepreneurs out of Indonesia, and they have a very different experience on the kind of content that works and how they monetize. So Southeast Asia, it's not a monolith where you can look at it as, oh, what works in one country will work in every country. Different cultures as well. And I would add one more thing, which is, I think this concept of product market fit, but then there's also founder product fit, I think it's called, right? Are you the right person to solve this problem? And that's where Xuan and I, we have a strong interest in self-development. We have a strong interest in working on yourself to improve yourself. So we really understand that market. And we can create a phenomenal product in that. When we looked at ghost stories and comedy podcasts and try, whether we should go for that, if it was 50-50 of either one could work, we would definitely go for the self-development because that's where we really can do it so much better. I don't know Vietnamese comedy. I don't know how, if we try to reach people on the countryside in Vietnam and create shows that they love, that's not my thing. I don't know how to do that. But when it comes to self-development, people who want to learn about entrepreneurship, business, finance, health, spirituality, I understand that. We both understand that market, and that's another reason why we went for it, although all the other reasons as well. And to finish up, maybe, is what's next, right? So we launched pod courses, we're scaling that up, it's been a success, and we just want to do more of it. But right now, and we're in the early days, we'll see how it goes, is we're now expanding. We want to keep that thinking of, okay, you have someone come in, they buy that book from you, and they learn about personal finance. Then they watch the course that's double the price from the expert who talks for 2 hours and shares with them what to do. What's next? Right? And that's where our newest product that we've started testing right now, so we still don't know how well it will do, but we're exploring it is, well, the next step would be, what if you could get personalized advice from that expert? So we're now starting to offer, okay, you watch the course from this guy. We offer video calls where you can buy 45 minutes or 30 minutes of talking to him and getting custom advice. Very high price, right? It's not cheap to reach these people. We're not making it affordable. But if you don't know this person, if you have no other way of reaching them, right? We're testing it with some of the most successful entrepreneurs in Vietnam, people who have built, one of the most famous F&B chains in the country, people like that. And these are not people you could normally reach. So we're really thinking of it as a little bit of a funnel of a lot of people would come to maybe try a book or a course, and then a certain percentage of them might want to go really deep and talk to these people and get personalized advice at a premium price. Right? So we're trying to look from the customer's perspective, what do they want, what is driving their need for self-development, and what else can we offer for them. And that's our journey so far. So thank you for your attention. And how are we looking on time? Do we still have time or no for Q&A?
I believe we have around 10 or 15 minutes.
Okay, so if there's any questions, we're happy to answer.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story with us. It's very inspiring. I have two questions actually. So the first one, I'd like to, if you could share the very first people that you interviewed, because those are the people that shaped the problem that you've solved at the beginning, then you build an audio book app. I'm also curious, the people that you interview at the very beginning, did they eventually become your customers, like paying customers for your apps?
For the second question, you mean after they became our employees, did they become?
No, my first question is the people that you first interviewed to validate that this is the needs,
right,
the problem for an audiobook app.
Okay, so let me jump into that. So the people that we interviewed, you mean, so you don't mean employees, you mean people we asked, market research.
Yeah.
So here, and this may be controversial and people might disagree with me, I'm not a huge fan of market research in a lot of cases. For example, when we ask people like, are you willing, like how much are you willing to pay? Essentially we got the answer like, I'm not willing to pay. Right? Like people were, because that's what, they were not used to it, right? So they were, and when we were deciding on a price, we were even thinking of like, we don't want people to be happy with the price that we give them. We want them to be slightly unhappy, but still willing to pay. Then we know we've kind of hit the right pricing. So on a personal side, we saw Xuan herself, who was like a working professional in a city in Vietnam, was looking for this product. She was willing to pay, but there was nothing there, right? So that was like one of the pieces of data that we used. And then we looked at other countries, like these things exist in other countries. They should exist here. And then when we looked at pricing and the product itself, we kind of, to be honest, like focused more on our gut feeling and what we wanted than asking people. I think asking, we still use, we do user research, like I told you, but we only ask people what they are already doing. We don't ask, I'm not a fan of asking what they would do, because I think people are really bad at answering that. So you can ask people like, do you listen to audiobooks? If yes, where do you find them, right? And they might tell you, yeah, I go to YouTube and I find audiobooks there. And it's like, okay, that's a good piece of market research, right? And that's what we found, where we found some YouTube videos before we even launched with 2 million views. So that was a sign for us of like, okay, people are listening, right? But the questions were always, what are you already doing? Not what would you do? Because I don't trust those answers. Because then we did launch and we did charge, and we charged an expensive price. We were double the price of Spotify, even though we only had 6 books, and we did get people to pay, right? And no one said yes before. And then you had a second question?
Oh, okay. So, I mean, you already answered the second question,
okay.
I think, because your approach to validate the problem is to observe how people solve this like what are the existing solutions to solve this perceived problem? And then you found that people actually, okay.
It just depends on the product, because I've worked in B2B companies before, and then you might be able to go in and get an LOI, or you might get a contract, or you might be able to get something before you actually build it or launch it, right? Or you might get an advance payment. That's always the best, getting people to pay, right? So that's what I would usually do on a B2B company. It was just with B2C, it's a bit different. We can't get customers to commit too much ahead of time. Yeah.
Thanks.
So I also have two-part question, but the most important question that I want to ask is, I know you share a lot of things, and I'm very grateful for that. It's very helpful so far. I want to ask, what is the most, maybe 1 to 3 things that's most important lesson that you wish that the other entrepreneur here would know before they enter this journey? And the second question is about your new product. I was just curious, so maybe you consider, if you don't want to answer, that's fine. That I know it's not your job to control the quality of the expert call, but if the quality is not as the user expect, your product will die.
Correct.
So eventually that question has to come up. So how do you solve that?
Sure. So let me jump into that first. I think we're a content business, and my feeling is that we don't really live in a time anymore where there's a lack of information, right? There's not too little content out there. If anything, there's too much. So I feel that actually a lot of what we do is actually the curation aspect of the right content. It's not that there's no online courses out there. It's just that a lot of them are such low quality that users are turned off and they don't trust the platforms. So in a lot of ways, you're exactly right. Our job is maintaining the quality and keeping a certain standard for our audience. Because our audience is young, educated professionals in the big cities. They have certain expectations and they're paying, right, to keep that. So we don't control the expert calls, but we control the expert selection. So we don't make it open to anyone. We handpick the people that we accept. And these are already people who, you know, they are consultants for Vietcom Bank or Vietnam Airlines. They hold talks to companies of that size and they train the management there, right? So they know what they're doing, probably better than us. So it's the key part is selecting the right people. Your other question about advice. The most important lesson, I think, I'll say mine, maybe you have a different one. Mm-hmm. I think try to reason from first principles and form your own opinion, because you will get a lot of opinions from other people, and some of them might be very successful in the past, but it doesn't mean it actually applies in your case. So we had VCs who, you know, told us you shouldn't be charging anything, right, from users. We had VCs who told us, when we first started, one VC suggested to me that I should expand to Thailand, even though we had raised like 300K, like we had no money to expand. We hadn't even really started here and they already wanted us to expand to Thailand. Like, if you don't have a strong opinion for your own thing, like consider their points, maybe it's valid, but if you don't have your own strong opinions, you will be pushed by others into directions, and that's not a good way to go. Like, you need to follow your own opinion, and just because someone is a VC or someone had a successful company at one point, like, doesn't make their opinion right. Consider it, but don't follow it necessarily. You need strong opinions as a founder.
For me, I think like keep yourself in check with your passion, because as an entrepreneur, we easy to fall in love with our idea or our solution, and at that point, not many people in your company can have a position to challenge you. Like some of them might listen or follow you. So keep it in check. I see that working with Oscar, we create a lot of milestones that we have to prove to ourselves in order to continue that path. And also, I think everyone should learn about how to spend money. Like the lesson with money is huge. You know, your first time got money from other people, how do you spend it? Like you will have 1,000 reasons, very make sense reasonable reason for you to spend that money, but in the end of the day, you don't need to spend that money. So it takes me more than 10 years. And luckily I waste my money, not anyone else's money. And before I receive other people's money, even now, I'm in front of, after raising a big fund, or when I don't have fun, I still act the same. So don't let the big amount of money affect your decision. Like finance is a big lesson for me, and I think it's very necessary for every entrepreneur.
Yeah, we see so many cases of people raising money and then, getting a huge fancy office, maybe here, and because they need it for showing off or whatever. Or they can't attract employees. It's like,
and by knowing that, we always say, oh, we're not gonna go into a big office and stuff. After we have the first big fund come in, the first thing I look is big office. And with knowing that already, but like, I was like, no, I have 1,000 reasons why I need that office. It will be better quality for studio recording. You know, I will host more of the event like this. So I will get community and stuff very make sense and reasonable. So luckily in the end, we kill that idea and we go for very reasonable rents. And I think that is our best decision ever.
Yeah. And exactly the other thing you said is, so big fancy office and then over-hiring.
Hiring.
We see so many people over-hire.
Yeah.
It's easy to hire, it's painful and hard to fire. And those HR costs, man, they rack up. So that's another mistake that many people do when it comes to managing their money.
So it's a lot of lesson around finance, money. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe one last question, and then.
I have a question about retention rate.
Yeah.
So
The what?
Retention rate.
Retention rate.
Retention.
I know a lot of people in the content subscription industry, and in the last 6 months, a lot of them suffer like huge retention problems. Some people I know even have like 90% drop off because there are a lot of apps out there that help you to track your spending, to see what subscription you have, and then during an economic downturn, people likely to unsubscribe from like content subscription, stuff like that, things that they think they don't need, right? So how do you guys deal with that? And is that a problem that you guys have right now?
Definitely not in the way like you just said. I think there's 2 reasons for that. So I would actually in the last 12 months we've been focused on that. So actually our retention improved in the last 12 months. I think it also has to do, part of it is what we did to improve it, but on the product side. The other part is, I think, because we're not an pure entertainment content app. We are a self-development app, and people, even when times are hard or they lose their job, they might want to upskill, they would want to learn how to manage their money better, or learn on different topics. So we haven't seen it. I think that's one of the key things of like entertainment versus education or edutainment, where we kind of fall in. I think that's a difficulty. But subscription businesses in countries like Vietnam are still very tricky, because more and more people use credit cards, but it's not like the majority of people. And then even if you use something like Momo digital wallets, they integrate with Apple, so you can pay for subscriptions that way. But if you don't have a balance in your account, it's not like with a credit card where it will always deduct, right? And you can go negative with a credit card. With Momo or something, you cannot go negative. So these subscriptions might cancel and you have churn. So it's definitely a tricky business in Vietnam, right? So you have to push more for annual subscriptions, for example, because the fewer billing events you have, the fewer potential issues due to stupid reasons like, someone didn't top up their balance on their e-wallet, you will have. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
For your attention.
Thank you for your time.